The goal of this presentation is to notify our clients regarding an SQL injection vulnerability against the DVWA application. The objective of this simulated attack was to gain remote code execution as www data. To briefly introduce the vulnerability, SQL injection is a security vulnerability that allows attackers to manipulate SQL queries to the web database. This vulnerability poses a significant threat to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the system because SQL injections can lead to data disclosure, data manipulation, and potential system downtime. Proof of concept. First, the tester manually detected a SQL injection vulnerability by submitting the single code character to trigger an error. To conduct a more sophisticated union-based attack, the tester figured the number of original columns through some trial and error using SQL queries, like the order by query. With the columns in mind, the tester created a PHP web shell payload into the var www.html temp directory using the into outfile SQL query. To establish a reverse shell, the tester utilized socat to craft the connection, and URL encoded the socat command. Next, the encoded URL was appended to the temp shell1.php with the cmd parameter as the following. As seen in this GIF, the tester was able to gain a reverse shell. If the current user does not have sufficient privilege to conduct the into outfile SQL query, there were other methods to retrieve sensitive data. For instance, the tester checked user, the show database, and columns of the database and used those information to extract the admin's password. The password was hashed using MD5, which was easily cracked using hashcat. Source code analysis. In the security low level, there were 0 security measures in place to limit user input. The user input is directly placed to the SQL query, which made the code susceptible to SQL injection. In the security medium level, there were some measures to prevent SQL injection vulnerability through the use of drop-down lists. The tester was able to bypass this measure with ease by intercepting the user input and injecting the SQL query via burp suite. In the security higher level module, an additional security measure has been implemented by adding the limit 1, which is to restrict the output of the SQL database to only one record. However, the tester bypassed this prevention method by simply appending the comment symbol, which effectively commented out the limit 1. The same payload was used as the medium level to retrieve sensitive data. Mitigating SQL injection vulnerability. Our team recommends using parameterized queries. By binding input values such as the username and password from the SQL code, the system ensures that the user input is treated as data rather than executable SQL statements. In other words, when a value is binded, it is securely passed to the database engine as a parameter, and the database interprets the parameter as a non-SQL data to be used in the query. Principle of least privilege. We also recommend database users have the minimum required privileges. By excluding the execute and into outfile privilege, this can already prevent RCE, which was demonstrated in the beginning of the presentation, as the user would not be able to write in the web directory. Password hashing. Lastly, we recommend using strong cryptographic hash functions like SHA-256 or using asymmetric encryption algorithms like RSA to hash algorithms. The MD5 is an outdated hashing algorithm and can be easily cracked with hashcat. This will provide an additional layer to security, as even if the database would be breached, it would be challenging to crack the password. This ends the presentation. Thank you. 네, 이상입니다.
All right, so I have one question regarding hash cracking. So I'm not like a technical person, I'm like the CTO of this company. And you mentioned that you were able to get the hash from our application and then crack it. Could you give me like a really brief technical explanation of what you actually done through hash cracking? I actually don't know how it actually works. So could you give me a brief explanation?
Yeah, sure. So hashing is basically a one-way function that is not reversible. So what Hashcat does is it compares, it takes a password, it uses the hashing algorithm to create a hash, and what it does is, since it can't be reversible, it hashes all the password and it compares the hashes if the hash value is already inside the Hashcat database, such as a rockq.txt. So it's basically hashing thousands of password and comparing the hashes with a given password in the rockq.txt file.
Oh, okay. So what you mean is it's practically like brute forcing, huh? You're brute forcing
Yes.
in terms of you're hashing each string that's inside this dictionary file that you mentioned, and then we compare the two strings at the end, I guess.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so what happens if we just increase the password into like 40 characters, random passwords? Like, would that be sufficient?
Well, that would definitely make hash cracking harder, because if that 40 long character is not in the leaked password database, it would definitely make it harder. But using MD5 or outdated hash, it doesn't. It also signifies that there are other databases that could be leaked, not only the password, but such as other databases like email. So it's recommended that this SQL injection does not happen in the first place.
Makes sense. All right. Ooh, I have
Do
another
you have
question
any other
actually.
questions?
Yes,
Yes.
I do. You mentioned about SHA-256 or something. I'm sorry, I'm not really familiar
Right.
with
Yeah.
cryptography. Yeah, is that
Hmm.
like the industry standard? Do you know what kind of like hashing algorithm is the industry standard? Because we're dealing with all sorts of laws and compliance, all those jazzes. So we need to have that, golden rule of thumb of hashing algorithms that we want to implement in this round of dev cycle. So is this what we should be
Uh,
using, SHA-256?
uh, I'm I am not 100% sure if SHA-256 is the golden standard, but I am pretty sure that RSA and SHA-256 with salted value is considered as an industry standard, but I would have to double check that part.
Okay, as long as you can communicate that to me later on, I think that would be fine. All right, thank you.
All right.